Typhoon Koinu remains strong near Hong Kong on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for October 6th. So we still have two storms in the Western Hemisphere and still a powerful typhoon in the east. Typhoon Koinu remains a Category 3 after passing through southern Taiwan and holding on to a lot of its intensity. We're still code orange for that storm particularly, as well as looking at other storms around the world. Day 128 in the Atlantic, and Philippe is moving over Bermuda fairly shortly, delivering tropical storm force winds there. And another area of interest off the coast of Africa, 60% chance now it could become a tropical storm. In the eastern Pacific, Lidia has strengthened and is nearly a hurricane at this point with winds of 70 miles per hour. 60% area of interest, has lost a little bit of support overnight, but still has a decent chance of forming near the coast of Mexico, and a 10% to the west there that doesn't look like it's going to form. In the Western Pacific, Koinu of course is still the main feature, but we're now up to 90% for another area of interest in the eastern region there, near eastern Micronesia, and could become a substantial typhoon, and a 30% chance still lingering off to its west near Guam, entering the Philippine Sea. Koinu will fairly soon make its closest pass to Hong Kong, and so significant impacts are possible with strong winds bordering along the coastal regions there. And as expected, no areas of interest there in the Indian Ocean either at this time. Well, here is Koinu. It's currently 174 kilometers from Shanwei, 242 from Hong Kong, 265 from Shenzhen, 298 from Macau, and 367 from Guangzhou. There are yellow typhoon warnings along the coastal regions, and a signal 3 strong wind warning for Hong Kong, and a signal 1 standby warning in Macau. Blue typhoon warnings extending around that Pearl River Delta region as well, so all those areas are on alert for this storm, which is passing by very close for comfort but is moving west-southwest. Here's Philippe right now, and you can see it's getting quite close to Bermuda, 264 kilometers away, but the nature of this storm is really broad, and so tropical storm force winds will be passing through and well all around that area around Bermuda, far away from the center of this storm, which to be honest with you is looking very poor. It's probably beginning its extratropical transition, and I would say maybe a little bit further than the beginning point of it actually. Well, let's take a look at some satellite imagery of all of these storms then. Here is Koinu, and you can see it's quite small now. Compact is the operative word, I would imagine, but still very powerful in that storm, and thankfully it stayed fairly south away from those coastal regions there. Category 3, at least 115 miles per hour, and to be honest, those latest frames show signs of maybe some re-strengthening once again. So will it pull another shock after it reached a secondary peak intensity earlier today, after that first peak before it reached Taiwan? Well, there it is, just about trying to get that red ring back, and here's the view from Hong Kong radar and the surrounding area, and you can see the storm there on a pretty clear path towards the west-southwest, so it looks like it will not get too close to Hong Kong that typhoon conditions will be felt, or in any populated area as it swings by. Well, here's Philippe near Bermuda, and I wasn't kidding. You can see its appearance very poor at this point. Large gaps out to reach Bermuda, but there's some strong winds obviously circulating all around that, with convection on the right hand side and off to the northwest. And this is Lidia right now, really blowing up massive amounts of convection and a massive cirrus dome there as well, really exploding in terms of convection well into the -80s, if not -90s, so a really impressive appearance here, still undergoing heavy wind shear, but it looks like it could become a hurricane later today, maybe. Sea surface temperatures look decent still in the eastern Pacific, certainly where Lidia is. Those temperatures are around 29 to 30 degrees Celsius, although they'll drop a little bit once it moves towards the west, but it will swing back east later on. In the Atlantic, where Philippe is, those temperatures definitely getting cooler, but in the eastern Atlantic, those temperatures are still looking good, around 29 degrees Celsius for that potential second system. Gulf and Caribbean looking very hot there, well above 30 degrees. In the Western Pacific, things are still looking good for many areas. There's a cool slot there clearly from Koinu, but where it is right now, those temperatures are 28 to 29 degrees Celsius, so still looking good. Philippine Sea very warm, around the Mariana Islands also looking very good as well, pushing close to 30 degrees Celsius or higher. Looking to the Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal along the coast of India and Bangladesh and Myanmar, temperatures are looking good, near 30 degrees Celsius. Arabian Sea also looking decent, 28 degrees generally, and further south, warmer waters near the equator. You can hear my dog in the background. The southwestern Indian Ocean looking decent, with those temperatures increasing near Madagascar, and off the coast of Australia those temperatures also rising up to 30 degrees Celsius in an area off Western Australia. The South Pacific also starting to come back, and the seasons are on their way down there in the Southern Hemisphere. The anomalies look like this. The Western Pacific still overall above average, apart from that significant cool slot from Koinu. The Eastern Pacific is still half and half as we look at that basin, but the eastern area where those storms might be forming, well, those are very warm temperatures above average. Southwestern Gulf of Mexico, also the same story there, 3 to 4 degrees above average. Where Philippe is, it's around 1 to 2 degrees above. Oceanic heat content in the Atlantic looks like this, and you can see still extremely high amounts of energy over large parts of the Caribbean Sea near the Greater Antilles and up towards the Bahamas. Eastern Pacific, 1 or 2 good slots there as well with higher amounts of energy. Lydia's over one of those, and the Western Pacific also looking really good in the Philippine Sea with medium to high values across the board. A little bit of a cool slot though even there after Koinu. So this is the forecast for Philippe then, moving up towards the north, turns post-tropical, possibly hurricane strength though by the time it moves in, very close to the border between Maine and the coast of Canada there, I think it's New Brunswick, and then up towards the northwest inland, and then stalling out for a bit as an extratropical low. Also looking towards the southeast there on the right hand side, you can see that next Atlantic system that the GFS is throwing up within the 5-day period, becoming a tropical storm maybe on the 10th of October, and then turning towards the northwest and strengthening. Eastern Pacific, Lidia there looking good and starting to strengthen a little bit more to hurricane status. National Hurricane Center agrees with that forecast, and then turning around towards the east, and then who knows what happens there, but it looks like it could be a hurricane landfall possible, maybe for the southern tip of the Baja California Peninsula or the coast of Mexico proper near Nayarit. And also the other system that the GFS was forecasting there, hardly to be seen at all on that forecast. They've dropped it, but we're still keeping those chances up until we get some consistency. There's Koinu weakening and eventually dying off near Hainan after passing very close to Hong Kong as a typhoon, but not close enough to deliver typhoon conditions. And of course that second system, enormous as it strengthens close to the Mariana Islands and really gets very large and becomes rather strong as well towards typhoon status nearing the Marianas. Let's take a look at another rainfall expectation then for Koinu, and obviously we're still expecting a few areas to get some elevated amounts of rain, and later on perhaps 1 or 2 real enhancements of the monsoonal pattern there along the coast of Vietnam really could cause a deluge or 2 along the coast there. But first of all, Hong Kong, maybe 6 inches of rain on top of what we've already had so far. That's 150 millimeters. Look along the coast of Vietnam though later on, getting close to 30 inches of rain there. That's 750 millimeters, and high amounts above 250 millimeters for large parts of the coast there. Hainan up to 6 inches as well, 150 millimeters, and the northern Philippines and a few spots there also getting high amounts of rain as well in the next 7 days. Not fully to do with Koinu, but other systems as well. In the longer range then, we're tracking this next Atlantic storm, which becomes a brief hurricane there as it moves towards the northwest and then gets swept away a little bit and loses its intensity and dies off and becomes a remnant low by the 15th. So it wouldn't last very long, maybe a 5-day period of that storm being named, and then it starts to die away. So it doesn't look like it will affect any land areas, but certainly another one to notch up that number of Atlantic named storms this year. which only would bring it 4 away from the auxiliary list. Western Pacific, watch that enormous, ferocious typhoon there, really strengthening up by this point and becoming a fascinating, powerful storm, and moving northwards and then curving northeastwards. Very few land areas involved, but some of the Japanese islands may have implications from this. But in general, it does remain out at sea. Very large, of course, in stature, but also quite powerful there. GFS forecasting a category 3 or 4, and maybe another system forming in the South China Sea at the end of that loop as well. Scan the barcode and that'll take you to the Force 13 merch store, where we have all of our usual items as well as our full season individual storm animations on request, and are still waiting for Hone t-shirts, because there's no sign of that storm, is there? In the Scilly range, no sign of Hone either, but look at the Eastern Pacific. It does throw up maybe another system there in that very long range, but obviously we can't really put any emphasis on this at this point. But there it is, so almost a repeat of Lidia there, becoming a hurricane, getting close to the coast of Mexico. And watch that again, it forms out of the lower latitudes there and eventually starts to get itself sorted. It takes its time and then it starts to strengthen. That is quite a common October kind of track there. And let's take a look at the Western Pacific. So 2 systems to look at there. Of course, that big typhoon moving well off there to the northeast, and then it's the other typhoon that forms in the South China Sea and becomes also a really strong system towards Hainan as well towards the end of that loop. So that's another one that we could be looking at later on in the run, but that's obviously very far out. And take a look at what this system does. This typhoon becoming a very enormous extratropical cyclone. Huge! Look at that in the northeastern Pacific there, affecting large parts of the coast of Alaska and British Columbia in Canada. That is very long range though, we'll have to see what happens with that, but you can discuss all of it on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13 for tropical weather and general weather chat. Well, that felt like a 100-mile-an-hour bulletin there, but this is what happened on this day 50 years ago. Another very powerful typhoon, underestimated by many, Typhoon Nora, with estimated central pressures into the mid to possibly lower 870s. An extremely powerful typhoon which was passing close to the Philippines as a category 5 on this day. We also had Typhoon Opal near Vietnam and Tropical Storm Patsy, which had just formed further east in the Western Pacific. In the Eastern Pacific we had 2 tropical storms, Catherine and Lillian, and the Atlantic was quiet. That was on this day in 1973. Back to today then, and the next name in the Atlantic will be Sean. In the Eastern Pacific it's Max, and in the Central Pacific it is still Hone, as it has been for 4 years. In the Western Pacific, our next name now is Balavan, and in the North Indian Ocean we are looking out for our next name there, Tej. We'll wait a little while for that one as well. 63 storms so far this year, the average is 92. I don't think we'll get there, but it has been quality over quantity. In the Southern Hemisphere, the next name is Jasper in the Australian region, Alvaro in the Southwest Indian Ocean, and in the South Pacific, it's Lola. That's all from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow.